Testing. 1, 2, 3. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. We're back at home, back in the booth on the Backlit Cinema Podcast. I'm your host, Zoe. That's Z-O or Z-O if you're outside of the U.S. Taking a look back at the movies of yesteryear. This is our 37th episode. Thank you for downloading or streaming. We really appreciate it. The reason we started the show was to strengthen the bond between my son, Zach, and me, Zoe. We watch movies that I loved when I was growing up in the 70s, 80s, and early 90s. And I'm going to tell you what Zach thought about those classic movies that we just watched. If you like this show, then rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Spotchaser.com, or your favorite podcast app. Finally, please follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and now TikTok. You can find the details in the show notes. Now, I'm still working on when this podcast is supposed to come out. I'm still working on trying to keep it coming out on Mondays. So we'll see how that goes. I'm recording this now on Memorial Day, this Monday, and I'm going to get it out today by hook or by crook. So happy Memorial Day. Also, I've been watching a couple of new shows that have come out. So there's a new show called Star Trek Strange New Worlds. I guess if you've been following me on Twitter, you know I've been following that show with the crew at the Open Pike Night podcast. And I've made some contributions to that show. That's a fun show to listen to. And Strange New Worlds is a great TV to watch. It harkens back to the early days of Star Trek when the Star Trek shows were episodic, and it's been updated. So I'm really enjoying it right now. And you can hear me talk about Star Trek on an upcoming episode of a new podcast that's out called Pardon My Fandom. And I get to fan out all over Star Trek. I think it comes out in, I'm not sure when it comes out. Just keep your podcasters updated for, and keep on the lookout for the podcast called Pardon My Fandom. It's hosted by Rocky, and he also hosts another podcast with his daughter called Audio Oddity. So also I've been watching Obi-Wan Kenobi that just came out, I guess last week or over the weekend or something like that. I'm not exactly sure. It came out a lot sooner than I anticipated. I wasn't really paying attention to when it was supposed to come out, but it's out now and it's fascinating, and I'm looking forward to see more of that. But now I want to talk about the movie that we just watched, the movie for what this episode is for. And the movie that we watched, well, that me and Zach watched, was Gladiator. So let's talk about Gladiator. A celebrated soldier in the Roman army is betrayed and reduced to be a gladiatorial slave. Maximus Decimus Meridius, commander of the armies of the North, general of the Felix legions, and loyal servant to the true emperor, Marcus Aurelius, must fight his way to the top of the top ranks of his fellow gladiators to win his freedom and his revenge against the tyrant who killed his wife and his son and usurped the Roman imperial throne with ambitions to destroy the Roman Senate. This movie was released on May 2000, produced by DreamWorks Pictures, Universal Pictures, and Scott Free Productions. It grossed over $187 million in the U.S. and Canada, and over $465 million worldwide on a $100 million budget to rave reviews. It did some good there. It made some money, and this is one of my favorite movies, and I contributed to its box office success. This movie was starring Russell Crowe as General Maximus Decimus Meridius. He's been in all right. This is a French word, so I didn't practice it, so I'm gonna try to get it out. See, I'm getting it. See, most people call it Les Mis, but I'm gonna get it out. I almost got it. Les Miserables, and he's also been in A Beautiful Mind and LA Confidential. Joaquin Phoenix, he plays Commodus, and he's been in a movie called Her and Walk the Line and Joker. Connie Nielsen played Lucilla. She was in 1 Hour Photo, Basic, and Wonder Woman. You have Oliver Reed, who played Proximo. He's been in Oliver and The House of Usher and The Three Musketeers from 1973. Richard Harris played Marcus Aurelius. He's been in Unforgiven, Camelot, and the Count of Monte Cristo. You know, I just thought of something just now. Because we watched Unforgiven maybe a couple months ago. And when it said that Richard Harris was in Unforgiven, I was looking, I couldn't remember who he played. And I just remembered who he played in Unforgiven because his face and his voice is unmistakable. And I don't know, I guess it's just thrilling to remember where I saw him from. Because, my memory is not all there anymore. But he kind of played this bounty hunter that got beaten the crap out of him in the beginning of the movie of Unforgiven. So now he goes from playing a bounty hunter to the Emperor of Rome, and he was great in this one too. Continuing with Derek Jacobi, who played Gracious. He's been in Gosford Park, Dead Again, and Anonymous. There's also Jaimon Hunso. He played Juba. He was in Blood Diamonds, Guardians of the Galaxy, and Amistad. David Schofield played Falco. He was in Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest, and Valkyrie. John Shrapnel, I think that's how you say his name, played Gaius. He was in Notting Hill, Troy, 101 Dalmatians from 1996. Tomas Arana played Quintus. He's in A New Hope. I'm sure it's not Star Wars A New Hope. This is something completely different. It's a movie called The New Hope, and then The Bourne Supremacy, and then Limitless. There's also Ralph Mueller. He played Hagen. He was in Universal Soldier and Cyborg. Spencer Treat Clark was Lucius. He was in Mystic River and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. David Hemmings as Cassius. He was in Barbarella and Deep Red. Tommy Flanagan played Cicero. You've probably seen him in Sons of Anarchy, the TV show, and Braveheart. And finally, we have Sven Ole Thorsen. He played Tigris. You've seen him in Hard Target, The Sum of All Fears, and The Running Man. This movie was directed by Ridley Scott. You've seen some of his movies like Mission Impossible, Carlito's Way, and The Black Dahlia. This was written by David hold on. I said it. I was about to say it wrong. It was written by David Franzoni. He did the story and the screenplay. He also did Amistad, King Arthur from 2004, and Citizen Cone. There's also John Logan. He wrote the screenplay. He also wrote for Skyfall, The Aviator, and the Penny Dreadful TV show. And finally, I have William Nicholson. He also wrote the screenplay, or co-wrote the screenplay, and he wrote here we go again with that word. He wrote on Les Mis and Unbroken. The music was by Hans Zimmer and Lisa Gerard. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. Gerard. We'll say Gerard. So the music is by Hans Zimmer and Lisa Gerard. Hans Zimmer, he has 228 credits and counting. And among some of those credits were Kung Fu Panda, The Dark Knight, and The Da Vinci Code. Lisa Gerard wrote Rail Rider, The Insider, and Ali. All right, so that's it for the opening credits. If you're enjoying the show, please remember that you can get t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, face masks, jerseys, and more at our refurbished website, backlickcinema.com/shop. Check out weekly for new designs and products, and we'll leave the links to the Teespring and TeePublic stores in case there's any of the legacy designs that you prefer. In particular, the pint glass that are only available at Teespring. We're going to skip over to our favorite parts because there wasn't really a lot that happened that I could talk about, and there wasn't a lot of stuff that I heard, but there was one thing that I wanted to touch on was the sad passing of Ray Liotta. You remember this great actor from movies such as Goodfellas and a bunch of other movies that he's been in. So it's just I just remember him as being just somebody fun to look at when I watch at the movies. So shout out to the family of Ray Liotta and his sad passing. So we're gonna scooch over to talk about our favorite parts. All right, so now we're here. Talk about favorite parts of the movie. Talk about what thrilled us, what got our bloods rushing as we sat in the theater and we watched this movie. Well, when I sat in the theater, when I watched it the first time, and then subsequent watchings on video. So this is the first time I get to watch it with my son. So this is, excuse me. So this is kind of different because he's like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old by the time this movie comes out. So this is after he was born. But I've been wanting to do a rewatch of this movie for a while, and he's never seen this before. So it's same. It's almost as if it might as well be a movie that came out before he was born. And I remember watching this movie and just being both thrilled and shocked about what I was seeing. I felt like I hadn't seen anything like this movie before. And it was just something that I really, truly enjoyed on subsequent viewings. So there's just so many parts. Even the opening battle was thrilling. And it goes through his escaping. Like he was betrayed. And he was escaping from his the people who had betrayed him in the army, and then his capture and fighting in gladiatorial fights and stuff like that. It was just nice to see all of that. It's hard to pinpoint like a single scene or a single favorite part in this movie because it just all flows so nicely for me. But I can say that one of my favorite things about the film, besides the look and feel of it, was the script, the lines that are offered in this film, is like the flowery language that it uses and the subtle threats that that come about as you're watching this film. It was super delightful for me. So the script in it. So a lot of the lines you heard, like a portion of one of the most famous lines as I was describing the movie, the line where the gladiator Maximus, at the time he was known as the Spaniard, he turns around and he reveals himself to the emperor. It's like one of the greatest lines in film. So I just wanted to go over some other lines that I truly liked. So there was one by Marcus Aurelius when he's trying to give Rome to Maximus. So there's this great battle. They're basically Rome is conquering its last territory, and that's a territory in Germania. So they're fighting the Germans. And so after they win the battle, the emperor is there. So the emperor is having like a council with Maximus. So, and I think the whole reason for the emperor to be at the battle was to talk to Maximus. So in the conversation, the whole point of the conversation is to offer Rome to Maximus. Like he has a son, he has a daughter. Actually, to be historically accurate, he would have had like a bunch of children, but for the purposes of this movie, he only has 2. So he has his daughter and he has his son. So his daughter is because she is a daughter, she can't rule. She can't rule Rome because she's not a man. So they won't let her do it. That the Senate and the people will not accept her as they won't accept her as a Caesar. So it would have to fall into his son, but his son is, I don't want to say his son is cray cray, but just not fit to rule. His son is not fit to rule, and he is unwilling to pass the leadership to his son. So what he wants to do is appoint Maximus as the what do you call it, the protector of Rome. So he would give all the powers of the Caesar to Maximus, and then have Maximus basically pass that power to the Senate, so the Senate could basically rule over Rome, ostensibly without the emperor. I guess that was the plan. The emperor Marcus Aurelius wants Rome to be a true republic. So I believe that he doesn't feel that it can be a republic as long as there is still an emperor. So he wants to pass through Maximus the imperial powers to the Senate. So that's his whole plan. So that's why he wants to appoint Maximus, because he believes that Maximus is able to do it, because Maximus doesn't have the ambition to be a Roman emperor. He doesn't have the ambition to be the ruler. He just wants to go back home to his family. So in the eyes of Marcus, that makes him the perfect candidate to pass over these to oversee the empire instead of his son. So when Marcus Aurelius attempts to bestow this great honor to Maximus, he asks him, could you be my protector of Rome? And Maximus says, with all my heart, no. Right? So I really love that. I really love the way the people spoke. And there was a line that kind of encapsulate what Marcus Aurelius envisioned, which is, there was a dream. Okay, I'm saying it wrong. There was once a dream that was Rome. You could only whisper it, anything more than a whisper, and it would vanish. It was so fragile. So that was a line that got me thinking. It really, the lines that people speak in this movie really put you into the mindset. So it basically helps, it's not just the story itself, but the way that the characters tell the story that pushes the stories forward, that I really enjoyed. So basically what happens is that, his son finds out. Well, no, his son doesn't find out. His father tells him directly. His father wasn't shady. So after he talks to Maximus, he talks to his son Commodus, and Commodus fully expects to be the emperor of Rome. It's like he lives his whole life knowing that he will be the Roman emperor, and he fully expects his father to pass on the rulership. But at that scene, at that battle, he wants it, and he wants it now. It's my money, and I want it now. That's his whole mindset. So when his father tells him that he's not passing on the leadership to Commodus is like, well, I love you so much, I'm going to kill you. and he hugs his father to death, and it comes out and just tells everybody that his father passed away. And naturally, he immediately takes leadership and has, because he knows Maximus was supposed to be the designated ruler, he has to eliminate the threat. So first he sends out soldiers to kill Maximus, but given that Maximus is better than they all are, there was he's better and he's cleverer. So they take him out so I think it's a group of like 4 soldiers, or 2 of them are going to execute him, and they take him out into the woods. So this is, at first I thought, I still think that the escape itself was it's a little bit hokey. It's like I'm not seeing how he could have escaped his execution. But so the first thing that happens is that they kneel him down, and his executioner is beside him, and he's gonna basically chop off his head, like just swing it, swing the sword down and chop off his neck, and kill Maximus that way. And then Maximus asks for a soldier's death, so that means that instead of being beside Maximus, the executioner goes behind Maximus, and then raises his sword, and he intends to thrust the tip of the sword down Maximus' neck and kill him that way. It feels just as brutal. So first the soldier aims at the neck, then he lifts the sword all the way up, and just before he thrusts the sword down, Maximus jumps up and butts him, the dude, in the face, and then a fight ensues. Now, why I say this is hokey is that, like, as Maximus is standing up, the guy still has a sword. He still has the ability to strike Maximus as he's standing up. So I thought that's why I thought the escape was a little bit hokey. But otherwise, the rest of the escape, it worked just fine for me. He just, because he is a better soldier than the men that came to, that were supposed to execute him, he basically just dispatches them. He fights them all off and he makes his escape, but not before he's cut pretty deep, so he's bleeding on the way out. He gets a couple of horses and he races home, because he knows that if he was supposed to be executed, then his family is in danger. But by the time he gets to his home, presumably in Spain, because they call him a Spaniard, and so he rides from Germany to Spain. That not a lot of clues as to like location or how long it takes for him to get there or what lands he's crossing. But he takes 2 horses, and it takes him presumably a very long time. But he gets home, and he's already too late. His family has been crucified and burned. And the other thing about this movie is that even in the very opening, there's a kind of foreshadowing of his own death. So you see basically him walking through a wheat field, and that theme of him walking, or that image of him walking through a wheat field, is replayed over and over again throughout the film. So this is part of his premonition. So he gets there and his family is murdered. And then, he's distraught. He buries his family and he basically passes out. I believe that he intends to die there. Like but he is picked up, and he probably would have bled to death, or caught an infection. But he's picked up by some people. So some people just showed up and they picked him up. And I guess they're just random people that just go capturing witless citizens in order to perform as gladiators. I guess that's how it goes. I'm not exactly sure. Where he's picked up by these people, and these people sell him with a bunch of others to Proximo, who owns basically I don't even know what you call it. He's a gladiator promoter. It's like, I guess if you have wrestling promoters, you have gladiator promoters. So, and this leads to another one of my favorite parts. It's that he's mad at the guy who is selling him these slaves, because that when the guy comes out to offer more wares, this is where Proximo grabs him by the balls and starts squeezing them. And he's angry because the guy sold him giraffes that won't mate. He says, "You sold me just these giraffes that won't mate. They're just walking around eating. You sold me queer giraffes." So it's just funny how heavy and intimidating Proximo is. So the guy promises to give him. So they basically hack out a deal for the gladiators and the horses, and now Maximus is now officially a gladiator. They start to try to, I don't know if it's training or whatnot. They try to assess the new guys that are in Proximo's gladiatorial, I don't know what you call them, den. No, it's not a gladiatory den. What would it be called? Cadre. We'll call it a cadre for now. Cadre is fine. So Maximus is new to the gladiatorial cadre, and they assess the new gladiators, but Maximus refused to fight. He doesn't want to spar. He doesn't want to fight the other gladiator. He doesn't want to show how good or how poor he can fight. He doesn't want to get involved. One of the other men that were captured with him did help heal his cut, so he'll be fine. He'll be healed, but he doesn't want to participate in this. But Proximo's attitude is, that's fine. You go out there, you'll fight, and that's exactly what happened. They throw the gladiators out into the arena, including the new ones, and it's kind of a unique situation where the gladiators are chained to each other, and they have to fight other gladiators that are not chained. So the new gladiators are handicapped because they're trained for each other, and because I think part of the thing is that because Maximus is chained to another gladiator, and in this part he happens to be chained to Juba, played by Jaimon Hanso. I guess part of him needs to fight for himself and fight for Juba, because he's like he I guess he's okay with him dying, but he's not okay with causing somebody else to die. So they fight together, and they win. The gladiators that oppose them were all stabbed. So the Spaniards gladiator win this particular contest, and so it goes on like that. And the movie kind of moves rather quickly from there to getting to Rome, and the way Rome looks in this movie is, it's like if you can imagine Rome, what the Roman Empire looked like in its heyday. I think that they did a great job in showing this. So they thrust out the gladiators again to fight some more, and they put them at a huge disadvantage because the gladiators that are sent, so Proximo's gladiators are basically sent out to reenact the defeat of the what do you call them? Not mongrels. What were they called? Barbarians. So it was basically Rome's defeat over the barbarians. Now, the interesting thing about the barbarians that they play are it happens to be a portion of, I'm trying to think of his name. I think it's a portion of Hannibal's army. So this is a celebration of Rome's defeat of Hannibal. So what Proximo's gladiators are supposed to be are the barbarians that Rome defeated. So Proximo's gladiator are supposed to be the Hannibal's barbarians that Rome had defeated. So there they are. They're basically just in like light armor, and they've got their swords, gladius, you know what they're called. And then and it's them against these their opponents are gladiators on horseback. They got chariots, they got horseback, they got archers, they got women archers just firing arrows at them, going around them in a circle. On the chariots are these blades, so that if you get too close to the chariot, it'll chop your legs or cut your torso in half. It's like the things are decked out to kill. And so at this point, Maximus decides that he's going to get, he wants to survive, and he wants his gladiators to survive. By this point, he has kind of formed a bond with his fellow gladiators. People, since they don't know his name, they shout Spaniard, 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 because he's like this star athlete in the gladiatorial arena. The chariots are going around him. Maximus, he forms like a formation because they have shields. They're able to mount a defense against them, and then they're able to knock the horses off balance with their shields, and then the hack and slash begins, and they're able to turn their supposed defeat into a victory. So Commodus is there. Commodus likes to go to all of the gladiatorial combats that are in the Colosseum, So he decides he wants to meet this Spaniard because they're already cheering his name, and he already had won a battle that he was not supposed to win. So he goes down there, and that's when that famous scene happens where, because at the time he's wearing a mask, because Maximus knows that, he doesn't want to be recognized by the emperor right away. He wants to get close to the emperor to kill him, but he doesn't want to be recognized by the emperor right away. So his path to the emperor initially was to be good enough to win his freedom or to draw the attention of the emperor. So if he is like a good enough champion, then traditionally an emperor will give the gladiator a chance to win his freedom. And then the emperor will present the winning gladiator with a wooden sword and grant his freedom. So if Maximus is a winning gladiator, if he has a lot of kills and he can kill in an entertaining manner, then the emperor will want to see him. And then once he's close enough to the emperor, he will kill the emperor. That's his entire plan. So it actually happens earlier than he anticipated. Before the battle, he puts on a mask which is what M.F. Doom had based his own mask off of. I think if you know about the late rapper M.F. Doom, he wears a mask that is reminiscent of both Dr. Doom and the mask that Maximus wears when he enters the Colosseum and fights for the first time as a gladiator. So he's wearing his mask. He's surrounded by the Roman soldiers. Commodus comes up and, to congratulate him or whatever. And then he asks the gladiator to take off his mask and, reveal his name. But instead of doing that, Maximus just turns around and starts to walk away, which is a huge no. He's already been told that you're not supposed to ever turn your back to the emperor. And Commodus is like, "How dare you, slave? Turn around and tell me your name." And so Maximus slowly turns around and he says his famous line, "My name is Maximus Decimus Meridius, commanders of the armies of the North, general of the Felix Legion, and loyal servant to the true Emperor Marcus Aurelius, father of a murdered son, husband to a murdered wife, and I will have my vengeance in this life for the next." So Commodus is shocked. He's shocked. He's shook because he's a halfway crook. So after this and a couple more exchanges, they basically let the gladiator go back to the pen or whatever room, the locker room. They let him go back to the locker room. And now first he shook because the gladiator is still alive, and he realizes that he was told that Maximus was dead, and he feels that, well, if they lie to me, then they won't trust me, and if they don't trust me, how could they ever love me? So he's really obsessed with the people showing absolute love for him. That's why he brought the gladiatorial games back to the Colosseum. For a while they were banned from the Colosseum, and now he brought them back. He wants to give the audience a spectacle so that they'll forget about their problems. He wants to distract them with bread and circus so they won't complain about their problems. They won't complain about poverty or hunger. They won't complain about disease because they're distracted with what's going on in the Colosseum. And he loves the Colosseum himself. He's there for almost every combat. He's there sitting in his imperial box watching the events. So now he's shook because the gladiator is alive, and he doesn't feel like he can kill this gladiator immediately just because he didn't want to make a martyr out of Maximus. So like I said, this is one of my favorite, most iconic scenes. And the other is like Maximus' interactions with Lucilla. They don't really say much about their relationship, only that either they had a relationship prior to Maximus getting married, or maybe Maximus had an affair with her. But it's clear that they kind of grew up together because they're all very familiar with each other. So apparently they've known each other since they were very young. Apparently, it would seem that Maximus had joined the Roman army when he was very young, and so they all kind of know each other. So there's kind of a relationship between Maximus and Lucilla, but they don't explicitly tell what that relationship is. And when Lucilla tried to go to Maximus for help, he initially refuses. He doesn't trust her. He doesn't like her. Well, he doesn't like her anymore. He doesn't like her in a way that he feels that he can help her. I think what it is that he feels that she is part of the system, and he feels that the way Marcus Aurelius felt, that the system is kind of corrupt, and he doesn't really want anything to do with it. He doesn't want anything to do with politics. He's trying to get out of life. He's just going to live his life as a gladiator, maybe get his revenge on Commodus, and then probably die. So the other striking thing is that he's constantly trying to defy Commodus. So like one of the things he does is the first when he had turned his back on Commodus, when he's not supposed to turn his back on the emperor, or when he had defeated one of his opponents. This happens to be Tigris. So Tigris, giant dude wearing this, he is said to be the only gladiator who has never been defeated. And he's given this shining armor, and he enters the ring, and during the fight, it's just a one-on-one with Maximus and Tigris. During the fight, they release Tigris from under the stage, so he has to both fight Tigris and fight the Tigers. Crazily enough, it doesn't seem like the Tigers are trying to attack Tigris, which is kind of weird, but the Tigers are all about trying to fight the gladiator Maximus. So they go at it. So he's killing Tigers and fighting Commodus, but he finally gets the upper hand because Commodus is, at one point he lands on his back and Commodus is about to strike him down, and then he's able to stab Tigris in the foot. Or did I say Commodus? I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. So I probably said Commodus when I was rambling, but I meant to say Tigris. So anyways, Tigris is stabbed in the foot. And then that's how he's able to get the upper hand on Tigris. And he got him into a position where he could kill him or let him live. And so the crowd is cheering out for one way or the other. And the emperor stands up and then, to give the thumbs up or the thumbs down. So he gives the thumbs down, meaning for the gladiator to kill Tigris, meaning for Maximus to kill Tigris. But instead, Maximus throws his sword down and people start cheering, Maximus the Merciful, Maximus the Merciful. It's like he gets more cheers from sparing Tigris' life than from killing Tigris. And bear in mind that Tigris is like a star athlete. He's like one of the greatest that ever did it. They come into the Colosseum, killing folk. And so I think that this is part of the reason that Maximus decides to spare his life, but also the main reason was to defy the emperor. He gets pleasure out of doing that. And so the emperor is angry. It's like the people in the political circles, they see this slave Maximus as being even more powerful than the senator. And Lucilla, I'm tripping up that name all the time. Lucilla sees this, and this is one of the main reasons that she's trying to get Maximus's help. So he finally agrees to through a series of events. He finally agrees to help her, and he meets with the senator, and they cook up this plot for him to escape. But the plot fails spectacularly, and it leads to the final battle between Maximus, and Commodus decides to actually go into the arena and fight Maximus himself because he feels like he has to give Maximus a glorious death. And in giving him a glorious death, he can gain the love of the people, which is what he truly wants, and also get rid of a nemesis in Maximus. So what I didn't touch on in the movie is the creepiness between Commodus, his affection for his sister Lucilla. So Commodus loves his sister like, all brothers and sisters love each other, but then he really loves his sister because he doesn't just love his sister's family. He has fallen in love with his sister apparently for a long time. And he wants his sister to marry him and bear him his heirs. And he's constantly threatening her son. She already has a son, and he's constantly threatening her son, his nephew. Not so much as like obvious, like I'm going to kill your nephew, but it's always like double talk and double language. It's like he says it in political speech or these weird actions, and in the same as his weird affections for her. And he basically gets her in a position where she reveals the plot to try to free Maximus, and that's the main reason Maximus is captured. So, like near the end of the movie, what's really neat is that Commodus is not going to fight Maximus at his full power. So, at their pre-fight briefing, I guess you call it, or their pre-fight meeting, he's talking to Maximus and how he loved him as a brother, but now they're gonna have to fight. So now they're gonna have to fight so that the crowd will love Commodus. So they embrace, and then as they are embraced, this is where Commodus stabs Maximus with, I don't know, a stake or a knife or something like that, to give himself the upper hand. Then he tells his people to, hide the wound and put him in armor. And so now Maximus is weakened. So now they get to go out and fight. So that's what they do. They go out. They're surrounded by the Romans, the Imperial Guard. And, they're fighting in that small circle in a giant Colosseum. And even though Maximus is injured, he's really somewhat overpowering the emperor, and then to the point where the emperor loses his sword, and then the emperor calls out another sword, and then when the emperor calls out for a sword, one of the men, the captain of the guard, is Quintus, and Quintus used to be Maximus' second in command, and Quintus is the one who betrayed Maximus at the beginning of the movie. So near the end of the movie, Quintus decides to reaffirm his loyalty to Maximus. He decides that he realized that Commodus is no good, that he's it's not somebody he wants to serve. So when Commodus calls for a sword, Quintus tells his men not to give him a sword. So that's when, but Commodus is not completely useless. He pulls out a hidden sword, a hidden knife out of his armor. And here's what happens. So after Maximus disarms Commodus from the sword, Maximus throws down his own sword. He's like, I don't need a sword to finish you off. I'll just beat you up. And then this is when Commodus pulls out his knife. And so now Maximus is at a disadvantage. So Commodus is swinging, but still, he's able to outfight Commodus. So he captures, first is like kind of like avoiding the slashes and punching Commodus. And then finally he gets a move where he captures the knife arm and then bends it toward Commodus. And then, basically slowly stabs Commodus in the neck. But he's still injured from being stabbed by Commodus before the fight. So with his last moments of life, he's telling he instructs Quintus to free any of the senators that have been in prison, and then tells him that the power of Rome is supposed to go back to the Senate to subsequently give the power back to the people. And then he falls down, and he sees his family in the afterlife, right? So, and this harkens back to the images that keep reappearing throughout the movie of him walking in the wheat field. So he's walking in the wheat field, and mostly you just see his hands, and then they continue to show this, showing more and more of the scene, and then like at the end of the scene is him seeing his wife and his son, and then walking up to him, and that's basically the end of the movie. So like I said, it's no specific part that that was more impactful than like the other parts, is because the scene kind of really flows from one to the next, and Zachary liked a lot of the same parts I liked. Like all the things that I explained to you that I like, they're the same things that Zachary liked, but he didn't mention any like memes or anything from the cartoons that he had seen. But he did really enjoy this movie, and like I said, he liked the overall story, not the parts that I like. So that's it. That's it for Gladiator. I wonder what you think about the movie. Let me know. Hit me up on the emails or on social media. Let me know what you thought of Gladiator. So now that we have talked about this fabulous movie, let's go into what the trivia is from Gladiator. All right, we are here to talk about trivia. So let us get started. Oliver Reed. I started with a mispronunciation. let me try that again. Oliver Reed died 3 weeks before principal photography ended. Because Proximo was considered a key character, a clause in the movie's insurance contract would have allowed the filmmakers to reshoot all of Reed's scene with another actor at the insurer's expense, about $25 million. However, most of the actors and crew were exhausted from the punishing schedule, and Ridley Scott did not want to cut Reed from the movie. The script was rewritten, and a body double and CGI were used to give Reed's characters a plausible resolution. One of the writers, William Nicholson, had thought that his time on the movie was over when he returned home to England, only to receive a phone call almost immediately telling him that Oliver Reed had just died and that he is needed to return to Malta to rework the script. Nicholson jumped on the first plane out. Joaquin Phoenix ad-libbed his scream. Oh, I didn't talk about this. This is another incredibly impactful part in the movie. So there's a scene in the movie where, after threatening his sister, Commodore tells him that, so basically what he's trying to tell her is like, I know you betrayed me. So instead of killing you, I'm going to have you as my wife, and I want you to bear my children. And he thought he's thinking that he's being merciful. So he says, am I not merciful? And then he screams it. So in this piece of trivia, it says that he ad-libbed that scream. And Connie Nielsen, who played Lucilla, she wasn't expecting it. And her frightened expression was genuine. So this is where he goes, am I not merciful? Am I not merciful? So yeah, that made him even more frightening, actually. So continue, moving right along. Maximus' description of his home, specifically how the kitchen is arranged and the smells in the morning and at night, was ad-libbed. It's a description of Russell Crowe's own home in Australia. Originally, Maximus was supposed to fight Proximo in the Colosseum after being captured, probably as a penultimate blow from Commodus. The opening battle scene was filmed in Bourne Woods, Surrey, England. The Royal Forestry Commission had originally slated the area to be deforested, so Ridley Scott eagerly offered them his facilities to burn the woods to the ground. The commission happily accepted. Although Commodus was initially favored by the Roman people, he lost that status through dramatic acts of megalomania. He is often considered the initiator of the fall of Rome. During his reign, he incorporated his name on many common terms, such as the terms for money and the terms for the people. Eventually, the citizens and the Senate had enough of his rule. He was poisoned, and when he vomited out the poison, he was strangled. Afterward, the Senate returned the language to what it had been before Commodus, and the many statues of himself he put up were taken down. The wounds on Russell Crowe's face after the opening battle scenes are real, caused when his horse startled and backed him into a tree branch. The stitches on his cheek are clearly visible when he is telling Commodus he intends to return home. 5 tigers were used in the scene where Maximus fights Tigress, the Gaul, in the arena. A veteran armed with tranquilizer darts was present the entire time of this scene, shooting for safety's sake. Russell Crowe was kept at least 15 feet away from the tigers. This is Russell Crowe's favorite of any American movie he's had done. He also cites Maximus as his favorite role. Now, I'm not sure when exactly this happened, because there have been other roles after this, but I can see this as being true. Russell Crowe became good friends with Richard Harris during filming, a friendship that unfortunately lasted only a few years until Harris's death in 2002. Oliver Reed, on the other hand, took an instant dislike to Crowe, despite Reed's being good friends with Harris. At one point, Reed even challenged Crowe to a fight. It is a common misconception that a Roman emperor put his thumb upwards to signify that a gladiator was to be spared, whereas the thumb down means that there would be no mercy for a down gladiator. In reality, the gesture was the other way around. Thumb up symbolized the sword action and thus death, and thumbs down, a sheathed sword, mercy. The crew was aware of this while making the movie, but since thumbs up is considered to be a good sign nowadays, they decided not to unnecessarily confuse the audience. Yeah, I had learned about this a while ago. So I had known that the thumbs up and thumbs down symbols or gestures were reversed from in Roman times, but I wasn't sure what thumbs up specifically meant in Roman times. So thumbs up in Roman times means sword action, like cut 'em, and thumbs down means sheathe your sword. That's cool. It actually makes sense. But I'm sure they could make it work in the movie, because then they would have to do a whole bunch of expositions like, nope, let's just skip that. Let's just do it the way we do it nowadays and get it over with. Joaquin Phoenix was incredibly nervous on set. He asked Russell Crowe to rough him up before the big scene together to psych Phoenix up. Crowe was at a loss. He went to Richard Harris for advice. Mate, what are we going to do about this kid? He's asking me to abuse him before takes. He said. Harris replied, let him get pissed. Over the course of several hours and several pints of Guinness, Crowe and Harris relaxed their co-star. Over the course of the gladiatorial scenes, Russell Crowe lost all feelings in his right forefinger for 2 years after a sword fight, aggravated an Achilles tendon injury, broke a foot bone, cracked a hip bone, and popped a few bicep tendons out of their sockets. And people think acting is easy. Yeah, sometimes acting is hard. Sometimes you got to go through some things that professional athletes got to go through, to say nothing of the diet and exercise that you have to go through to get yourself into shape of the person that you're trying to portray. Like Michael B. Jordan getting into a boxer shape, or Chris Hemsworth getting into a superhero shape, or Russell Crowe in this instance getting into like the shape of a fit general in a Roman army. Yeah, they go through a lot, and then when they're filming these action scenes, they're going through a lot. So yeah, Russell Crowe had a time of it, didn't he? So Maximus Tattoo, SPQR, stands for Senatus Populescus Romanus, which translates to the Senate and the Roman people. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I pronounced all that wrong. Senatus, maybe that's correctly pronounced. Populescus, I'm not sure how that's pronounced, and Romanus, I'm pretty sure I got that right. So anyway, as I read earlier, it means the Senate and the Roman people. This was one of the main slogans of Rome throughout its history and can still be seen in modern times on manhole covers, which is funny because I've seen this a lot in other movies. SPQR, never known what that stands for, so this is the first time I found out. Jack Gleason modeled his character Jeffrey Baratheon in Game of Thrones from 2011 after Emperor Commodus. Yeah, I can see that. Like modern day athletes, ancient Roman gladiators did product endorsements. The producers considered including this in the script, but discarded the idea as unbelievable. They were like, man, come on, man. They didn't do that. Which is kind of funny because a lot of this movie is not based on historical events, but it is using historical character or historical figures in order to tell this fictional story. So given that none of this is real, why not? Why not do gladiators doing product endorsements? That's actually kind of funny. I wonder what that would have looked like. Russell Crowe began shooting this movie a few months after The Insider from 1999 had wrapped. He'd gained more than 40 pounds for his previous movie and lost it all before this one. He claims he did nothing special besides normal work on his Australian farm, which, yeah, because farming is physically intensive. Have you guys ever tried farming? That joint is hard. And I'm not, even if you have a small garden, that's physically intensive labor. So yeah, I can see that. The crowd scene in the Coliseum used real-life extras, digital extras, and 400 cardboard cutouts of spectators. So they went all out to make it look like the Coliseum was filled with spectators. So that's it for the trivia provided generously by IMDb. And our next segment is the critic's thoughts. All right, now we get to see what the critics' thoughts of Gladiator. So I got these comments from Rotten Tomatoes. The critics on Rotten Tomatoes gave it a 78%. The audience score was 87%, which is weird. I thought the critic score would be higher. And the IMDb reviews were 8.5 out of 10. So Julia Washington from Cleveland Plain Dealer wrote, with this role, Crowe establishes himself as an action star. His steely glaze rarely changes, yet he conveys the gamut of emotions. His physicality makes the battle scenes a muscular delight. And I agree. It was a spectacular watch. Saddle Weekly's Brian Miller wrote, Gladiator certainly feels like it was written by committee and template. I don't know what template this is written from, and it flows pretty good to me. I don't feel like it was written by committee. I think he just wanted to write something mean. Kurt Honeycutt from Hollywood Reporter wrote, Russell Crowe solidly anchors this epic scale gladiatorial movie, the first in nearly 4 decades, by using his burly frame and expressive face to give dimension to what might otherwise have been comic book heroics. I feel you. I feel you on that. That's fair. I would say that's a fair assessment. Megan Spencer from Triple J wrote, despite its big battle scenes and epic craftsmanship, Ridley Scott's Gladiator lacks the spirit and true heart of a legendary epic. Revisit Spartacus and Ben-Hur on video for the real McCoy. I don't know about this. I don't, and I can only say that I don't know because I've not seen Spartacus and I haven't seen Ben-Hur. I've wanted to see them, but I haven't gotten around to see them. These are 3-hour movies. It takes a lot to get me, to get my juices flowing for a 3-hour movie. But I feel like I will eventually see this movies, and I can fairly assess this comment and make my own judgment on how these movies compare to Gladiator. Susan Stark from Detroit News wrote, a visually astonishing picture that brings script, performance, and alas, displays of violence up to the modern standard. Yeah. Being that the modern standard at that time was 2000, and now we're in 2022, 20 years later. And as I think about this, my thoughts are there was some of the scenes that kind of use this kind of slow motion technique that I feel like is outdated today. I feel like there are not many people using this slow motion technique as often as they probably did back in the early 2000s. So finally, Rob Blackwilder from Splicewire wrote, while Gladiator is nothing if not stimulating and richly visual, director Ridley Scott's sense of grandeur is inconsistent and often overreaches his attempts to modernize the storytelling for MTV audiences. I read that all wrong, but I gave you the gist already wrote. It's I don't know. You could tell this is kind of dated because he's referring to MTV audiences, and people don't think of MTV audiences in that way anymore, if at all. I don't know if he says Ridley Scott's sense of grandeur is inconsistent, but I don't know if he meant in this particular film or from film to film. I'm not exactly sure what he's trying to say. He gets that this movie is stimulating and richly visual, but he wrote that Ridley Scott overreaches his attempts to modernize the storytelling. I don't think that is true. Don't think that is true. And you're supposed to modernize it. I don't think that he overreaches anything. I think that had he added a rock and roll soundtrack, then he would have overreached. I've seen that in A Knight's Tale. They got the crowd shouting, "We will rock you" by Queen. That would be reaching. That would be an overreach, but it works. At least it works in A Knight's Tale, which is another great movie. But I don't really see that in this movie. So that's it for what the critics thought. Finally, Gladiator, as is. Whoa, I can't read anymore. Gladiator is, as of this recording, available free on Paramount Plus. That's it for today. I hope you have a great Memorial Day. Next week, we are going to take, with the new Top Gun Maverick in theaters, it's only proper to take a look back at Tom Cruise in the original Top Gun. Follow us on Twitter at Backlook Cinema or on Facebook or Instagram at Backlook Cinema Podcast for updates. And as a reminder, we're posting videos on TikTok. You can check us out at Backlook Cinema. Don't forget that you can contact us with any questions, comments, or suggestions at fanmail@backlookcinema.com. One last time, if you like this show, then please help us grow. To do this, you can subscribe to the show, rate us, or write a review on Spotify's, Podchaser.com, or Apple.com, or your favorite podcast app. Believe me, it matters. Be safe. Share a movie from yesteryear with your family. Hug your loved ones. And if you're gonna be anything, be outstanding.